It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the program. Good to have you along with us. Brad Miller here, and today we're going to talk with a real-life Arizona Ranger. Exciting show. Captain Rick Roda is with the Arizona Rangers and has been for some time, and yet they still are out there, still doing what the Rangers have done for about 100 years or so.
Yes, absolutely. The Rangers actually started off in 1901. If folks remember Arizona history, Arizona was not necessarily a real safe place to be, especially in the southern part of the state, during that forming time in the early 1900s. A lot of bad guys, a lot of rustlers and train robbers and so forth. And then, if you might recall Arizona history also, that Arizona was the last continental state in the United States to become a state. It actually did so in 1912, but during that first decade of the early 1900s, there were a lot of problems in Arizona. The territorial governor at the time, Murphy, then petitioned the territorial legislature to see if he can get some Arizona Rangers, as he named them back then, to help out with doing something about the bad guys and the rustlers.
You bet.
If we remember, a lot of our Western movies were based upon exploits of bad guys and good guys in Tombstone, as we all know about Tombstone and Tucson and so forth. Well, the Arizona Rangers were formed. Captain Bert Mosman, who was a cattleman at that time, was the first captain. He formed the company of Arizona Rangers with just 14 men at that time. And were paid a very pittance almost of maybe $50 a month, and the captain made maybe $100 a month. Their objectivity was to go out, search out, and capture bad guys. So you can let your imagination be a guide as to how they did that.
I was going to say, there's been hundreds of movies, hundreds of books and novels written about these very exploits, and to just think for a minute that at some point those were all true, and loosely or maybe tightly based on facts and things that really did happen. It's incredible.
Yeah, there is a story of one Arizona Ranger in 1901, one of the first 14. There were a couple of bad guys, last name Smith, cattle rustlers, as you know how cattle rustlers worked back then.
You bet.
In the Springerville area, if you know Springerville on the east side of Arizona. The Rangers found out these guys might be hiding out in that area. They went out there and reconnoitered the area and came upon them. Well, a big gunfight ensued, and one person was killed. One of our Rangers, Carlos Tafola, was shot and wounded, and did not. He ultimately passed away, sadly. But he shot back and defended himself and so forth. But the point I'm trying to make is that as he was dying, he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a silver dollar, hands it to one of his friends that were nearby, and says, "Give this to my wife, because this and my month's pay is all she will have left of me." And then subsequently passed away. That's one of those stories in our folklore which we would like to commensurate and talk to folks about, to kind of tell you the standard and the makeup of some of these men who went out there, literally sometimes weeks on horseback, looking for bad guys throughout the whole state. Subsequently, there was a maximum of 26 men in the Arizona Rangers, maximum by legislature. And their duties covered the whole territory of Arizona. And we know how large and spread out the state of Arizona is. They went throughout the state, looking for bad guys. As a matter of fact, one of the other captains, Captain Wheeler, there were really only 3 captains originally in the Arizona Ranger. that being Captain Mosman, Reining, and Wheeler.
Okay.
Wheeler was a man ahead of his time, actually. He enforced rules of fairness on his Arizona Rangers to say if you capture a bad guy, you treat them as you would like to be treated. So, but the point is, he made 7 general orders in the Arizona Rangers, and some are kind of humorous in a way as we look at them today. One is that they should not hang around saloons, just drinking in as he called it back then, bawdy houses. So he's trying to establish, obviously, some professionalism in the Arizona Rangers. And one of the things that one of his orders indicated that when his Rangers were out in the field, they were required once a week to send a postcard to him, letting him know where they were and if they were still alive. Well,
wow.
We know for certain back then that they didn't have email, they didn't have fast postal services, and who knows how long if one of the Rangers mailed a postcard to let the captain know that they were alive, if and when it ever got to him. So there was that kind of a setup with the folks out there.
Would they, it sounded like they were kind of given basically a charter, clear out Arizona, and then it was up to the captains, really, was it to decide, well, we're going to go this way. Well, we've got some compelling evidence that these bad guys are in this part of the state. Would they go as a group? Would they pair off a little bit, kind of subgroups, and go to different areas?
Yeah. Well, they would have subgroups. There's great photos that we have in our historical contents of Captain Wheeler mounting up. There's probably about 7 or 8 Rangers ready to go out into one of their adventures to look for bad guys. So the captain certainly would pair up people and assign Rangers to go after specific individuals that they had received word of rustling, robbery, train robbers, as we know.
Right.
That was pretty popular back then, train robbers, you know, so as we know.
I'm sorry, were they pretty successful over?
Yes, they were. I can't, but I recall reading something that over that period of a decade, they captured 4,000 bad guys. Now, that could range from many different crimes during that period of time.
Sure.
But I think 4,000 was a number that came up overall of all the different bad guys they captured.
And when we say successful, I guess one of the things we have to go back to is from the time they were formed to help kind of clean up Arizona until a decade or so later when Arizona did become a state. If Arizona was kind of let into the club, as it were,
exactly,
there must have been a better feeling in Washington that the Rangers and the state have kind of gotten things under control in terms of that Wild West outlaw thing.
Absolutely. And as we know, Arizona did become a state in 1912. It wasn't solely the Arizona Rangers, but they were a great and big part of cleaning up the bad guys. You had your local sheriffs and your local marshals and police officers as well in the local communities that certainly did their jobs as well.
Right.
But the Arizona Rangers were free to roam the entire state looking for the bad guys.
When you say, and I'm so sorry, but I kind of drift into that Hollywood thing, and I know there's a huge difference, but you kind of get, and maybe it's just my perception, that you hear about, well, the Rangers are on it, and you kind of think, all right, now we can sit back, and you know what I mean? To me, there's just that reputation. It's like, well, the Rangers are on it, so now they're going to get this guy.
Yeah.
Is that prideful, or is that wrong, or?
No, it's not. I think it's very, very prideful. And probably righteously so back then in the early 1900s, 1901 to 1909. And maybe they were a fearful unit to behold when bad guys are saying, they could say, oh my gosh, the Rangers are after us, we got to get out of here. I don't know if that was the case, but the point is that I do believe that they held a good reputation and could be a fearful reputation that we were looking for a bad guy and we'll get him.
Excellent. Captain Rick Roda is with the Arizona Rangers. vvrangers.org is a website you can look at for more information. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the Rangers and what they're up to today. It's Countywide. We'll be back right after this.